Unchurned is presented by UpdateAI.
One of the most important things for a CSM to do in general, not just as leadership, but as an IC, is to be able to forecast, not just like churn, not just growth, not just opportunity, but forecast like almost that maturity idea, that thought of like where this customer is. And we talk about being strategic CSMs. We talk about being able to do strategy and whatever the hell that means. But the problem is like we're so handcuffed where a successful CSM that is making a six-figure salary should be able to look at their book of however many accounts they have and say,
well, it's great to be back here. Chrissy is on an on-site this week.
She's actually here in Raleigh.
Oh, she is?
Yeah.
Oh, you should be hanging out with her.
No, not enough time. She told me. She shut me down.
Oh, okay.
Wow, John. That's been right. Shut down this week.
It's been pretty brutal.
It's been a week. It's been a month. It's been a year. We won't go beyond that. We already did in the last episode. So I'm Josh, founder and CEO of UpdateAI, co-host of this podcast with Jon Johnson. Christy is out. And we've got three very distinguished guests with us today. We have Jenny Calvert, Lawrence Waldman. I don't know whichever one to go with. And Parul Bhandari. Did I pronounce your last name and your first name for that matter?
Pretty good. Yes.
Well, Jenny was shaking her head no. So,
Carl,
I asked last night.
I
asked last night the same thing. We've met a million times, and I said, I've never asked you how to pronounce your name, and I've been butchering it for months. So you did good.
No, but she was going to let me. She was going to give me a pass, right?
No passes for Josh.
No, fine. Okay. Sorry, that was totally wrong. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's Parul. It's Carl with the P is for the first name, how I tell people. Just make it easy.
Perfect. Parul Bhandari. Great. So you guys, the three of you are working on some really cool stuff in customer success. You are three leaders within the space, and you have some strong theses around CS and things that you want to do with customer success. And we want to hear more about that. So John, you volunteered to MC this conversation.
Because you have to go take a phone call?
Because I have to go make a phone call. But I'll be back in 45 seconds. And I trust you, nobody's going to miss me. But I want to hear more about what these folks are up to. And I think it'll be really interesting content for us to get, because I think they really do have some strong, compelling hypotheses that I want our listeners, and I say this sincerely, I want them to hear that point of view. So,
well, you're lucky, Josh, because not only did I get your email, I read it just now. So we're good. Bye, Josh. No, it's so great to talk to you guys. I have seen you individually kind of around the space. And Jenny, I know you and I have met before. What I actually really love, and what I hope that we kind of lead into this is customer success, if you've been in it, has always kind of been like a one size fits all, quote unquote, bucket where you just walk in and you join a CS organization, and it's been built by 9 leaders before you and they've all been replaced. And you've got KPIs that came from a book that you read about Salesforce or something at Oracle, or some consultant came in and said, here's your triple metric, and nobody knows what the fuck is going on. And one of the things that I love about what you guys are kind of talking about is like the start of it should always be on a daily basis. What is the definition of a successful customer? Not this title that we have with a hashtag and awards and champagne that we have to drink, but like truly, when you come into a specific organization, how do you define the success of an individual customer and then build programs around it continually? Am I on the right track here?
Absolutely. That's really it. That's why the three of us got together. We'd had conversations before, but we realized we were all saying the same thing, which is that nobody really knows what great customer success is, because it changes all the time. And it's defined by, like you said, a hodgepodge of people who probably don't have the best interests of the customer and the value that you're driving for the customer at heart. And so we got together because we want to help people change that, whether you're a success leader, a founder, a CEO, in go-to-market, an individual contributor.
Yeah.
Our collective experience has shown us that we can help define what that means for you, for your customer, and for your company. And most importantly, we can help you evolve it, because what you're going to have as your definition of great success today is going to be very different as you grow and scale, or as you shift, or as your customers shift, or
as the market shifts.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hello, 2024.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's funny that like we got together after Gainsight Pulse and we were like, what are your big takeaways? And we were all three like, that not enough has changed. Like we're still trying to solve the same problems. We're still seeing leaders walk from org A to org B with their same playbooks and things that worked, and forgetting that like it's all different. Their customers are different. Their business models are different. Their sales model, like everything is different. And so I think that is what makes it so complex. But what makes this idea so exciting is that, you know, simplifying for where you are, where your customers are, where your product evolution is, and all of those things, not trying to be the mature organization that you see on LinkedIn telling you what to do, but really like we talk about going to like blank page of paper and like getting obsessed with customer problems again, and then understanding the people in your organization, if you even have a team yet, which probably you play with founders who don't have a success team yet a lot, and advising them on like, what are you thinking about? What does this motion look like? And then as you grow and start hiring your first, your second leader, what do they need to look like based on what success means for your organization? And taking it really, I think, back to the roots, back to the foundation.
I love that. This idea of like success at stages is so interesting. I think, I'm seeing this trend of early stage startups coming in and hiring like a head of CS that is usually like a high performing IC that kind of takes that player coach model that probably only has like a bunch of experience working with accounts. Like maybe they're a little bit cheaper, which is great for a startup. They have some experience, they have some ideas. But I actually don't know that that is the right solution. Because the problem at that point, when you're a seed or an A round, right? And we can go through all of the rounds. I've been through everything to like an E or an F to a merger acquisition. So we got a whole alphabet here to go through. But at the beginning, it's very much like if it's what do you need stable revenue, right? And this isn't how do we do product feature requests? How do we do road mapping? How do we build customer coalitions? Like none of that, not that it's not important. But the idea is like in that first round, those first few like years of a business, you need stable revenue. And you need to, I like what you said, Jenny, is working with your GTM leaders to say, what are the problems that we're facing right now with acquiring customers and keeping customers? And that's it. That's it. That's number one, right? So where did we go wrong? How did we get to this point where everybody has the same goddamn playbook that they just share PDFs about? And I've done it. I have my own. I've sold it online. But like, how did we get here? And then how are you guys kind of thinking through a little bit of that shuffle to say, don't think about it as here's 100 pages. Think about it as here's a white sheet of paper and we're going to solve the problems.
Well, and I think Jenny has a really good answer for this, but I have to go back to what you were saying about what happens. And like when we have these early stage companies hiring that first head of CS, what is that person coming in and doing? They're applying their playbooks to this new organization, but most of the time it doesn't fit, right? Mm-hmm. It's never going to fit because you have to work through contracts or pricing or like, who knows? This was written on a napkin in year one and like nobody can find it. And so you're sitting there just doing a lot of cleanup. Mm-hmm. And I sort of like,
sorry, Paul, but this is what we talk about. And then that becomes your customer success process.
That's what people think of as customer success. Yep. They think, oh, wow, I got somebody in and they helped me clean up my Salesforce. Well, wow, that's not the job that we came to do, you know?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the bad habits start early, right? So like, that's where we're, I think what we're talking about a lot of the times is like building good habits. And I deal with a lot of early stage founders. Building good habits on day one can really help you lead down the path of success when you are at your Series A, when you are at your Series D, when you are going to IPO, right? Like, but building that culture of like, hey, we're gonna have thought through our plans, you know, and not just kind of like throw things and see what sticks to the wall.
Yeah. Well, and John, you had a great point though. Is that like, why?
I love it when people tell me that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying that to flatter you a little bit, butter you up.
It works.
But you said like, why is it that people come in and they still can't get it right? And it's because, look, it's hard, right? It's not as quantifiable. You can't it's not like sales where you've got a target, you hit that target, you don't hit that target. You've got a pipeline. Like these are all things that people are used to, and even founders and CEOs sort of get. People don't get it the same way. Customer success and a lot of success leaders don't think like that. And you have to, as Jenny and Parul said, you have to customize it to where you are and what the value is that you're trying to provide. So you get in this vicious cycle of, I've got this playbook. I know it's going to work. I clean up a bunch of messes, and then that becomes what customer success is until things start to shift and change, and then it doesn't work anymore because the reality is you never really had anything to begin with. You were just fighting fires. We had actually earlier today, we had a whole bunch of great analogies about fires. It's maybe a little too soon given what just happened.
Yeah.
It's like essentially you've got a town where every building seems to catch on fire. So instead of trying to figure out why they catch on fire, you just hire more firefighters.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And that's
my LinkedIn headline for years was theoretical firefighter. And I put that as like a joke, but it's like literally most of my career has been, you get on a call, somebody's pissed, and you gotta put it out.
Yep.
And you get lost, and you never get to the point where you're solving the problem, whatever that problem is. Who knows what it is?
You're literally you're solving a moment in time and then moving on to the next crisis. And that's not, we all like in theory, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be understanding how did they get there, because the reason they got there is because there's some sort of disconnect with the value, wherever that might have come from within the organization and from the company. But instead, you're just solving it and moving on. And everyone feels great because you solved the problem, but you didn't actually do anything.
And and then we call it building trust. And then we call it, right? And we call it all of these things where we're their, advocate and whatnot. But we're really just, like you said, like we're just putting out that fire. And I don't think one of the questions that I do want to ask the group, Josh is still on a phone call. So we'll ignore him.
Even though he said it was 45 seconds.
It was longer than 45 seconds, which we're all better for it. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm kind of stuck in this big, like kind of whirlpool of this like maturity mindset of not just with our customers, but also internally, like how we identify what our customers need. And generally, like we've got pretty standard segmentation, right? Where it's healthy, red, yellow, green, that kind of stuff, right? But we don't necessarily like know how to like prescribe anything to it. We are fully in reactive mode for all of our customers. We just kind of show up when they come to us, and we have very little opportunity to really get in front of it. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you guys about, because you do kind of paint this picture that you've got kind of some solutions, or at least some processes that can be applied across like various stages, not just the early stage, but also late stage, where, how to work with GTM leaders, how to work with CTOs, how to work with CCOs, or even before you get to that point. How do you start thinking about, or at least like identifying where the company's maturity is, so that you can prescribe to them what you're trying to sell to us, which is, we're not just going to come in and clean up your sales force. We're not just going to be firefighters. We're actually going to solve like the problems. How do you get through the bullshit of everything else that everybody is used to talking to you about? I was like, well, my churn numbers, and I don't have a center of excellence, and I don't have this kind of stuff. Like, oh my God, before you get there. So welcome to the conversation, Josh.
Can we start over?
Nope. Okay. That was a great question, and they're going to do great.
Yeah.
I'm sure they are.
I think one of the approaches that's interesting is, we've all heard of like a 360 review, right? Where like an individual, you get everybody else's kind of perspectives of what they do well and don't do well. Taking the same concept into an organization and spending more time with the non-success people is absolutely critical. And I think we shy away from it. I think customer success, like as a space and industry and field, we love each other. Like we talk to each other all the time. We've created this like group think of like, hey, how are you doing these things? And how are we doing these things? And we've kind of insulated ourselves. And I think that's caused more harm than good as we look to spread out and broaden within the organization. So understanding product, understanding the full entirety of go-to-market, which I do believe success fits under. We have revenue responsibility, commercial responsibility.
Without a doubt.
Engineering. Get closer to engineers. They speak a different language. It's a weird one, but once you understand it, you can do magic. So learn their language, learn what they care about. Most often, when you start spending time with technical leaders, you realize that they actually want to know more about the customer, and they are really curious. So they have more context as to what they're building and working towards. And so there's all of these different like opportunities to thread and synthesize organizationally what's happening, so that the prioritization of the customer success function is crystal clear, and you're able to communicate the benefits to the organization And guess what? Your customers benefit too, because you're always pulling that in, or you should be.
Yeah.
Kind of to answer your question a little bit too, like today we were talking about, because we have our call on Mondays too. So we were talking about assessments that we do. So Jenny has an assessment, I have an assessment. And I was saying to the team, I don't get to use my assessment very often because the people I'm talking to are so early stage, they don't have any process for me to assess, right?
Yeah.
No, I mean, those listening, some of you do, but and that's okay. But that, if you can go through that checklist and say you don't have this, that can also be like, yes, you're in the early stage, easy one, right? I know. But I think from there on, I know it's the easy one, so that's why I'm answering it with the easy way to answer the question. But no, I think that from there on, like we can take assessments like what Jenny has, like, and I think Jenny, I was looking at yours today, but you have what's your organization size, and looking to maturity markers. There is something that we are hoping to do as a group, which is sort of define out a framework of this, right? And we actually started talking about this recently, but define out a bit of a framework. Is it going to be a perfect, like, okay, you're over $20 million, you go into the middle stage? No, but at least define like some markers as to when you like exit growth, early stage, you become like a growth stage company.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, let's be honest. I joined a Series B organization that had none of it. So like, you can't go off fundraising stage. You got to understand where they are in product market fit. And Josh, I'll look at you a little bit, but like you can go in and out of product market fit at any time, right? So those signals are constantly evolving and changing. The market's evolving and changing. So how are we synthesizing all of the inputs, and how do they change over time? And how are we adapting progressively forward instead of reacting? John, you talked about it, right? We're still trying to do the same things that were solving the problems of a year and a half, 2 years ago, instead of saying none of that actually matters anymore. We need to be thinking about moving in this direction because here's where the future is, right? If we're losing a magnitude of revenue, no offense, your segmentation model is not priority number one.
Not at all.
No.
That is not the biggest fire to solve for. It's fun.
It's so important to have that whole organizational and company perspective, because people don't want to hear that, right? They expect a customer success leader to come in and fix customer success.
Yeah.
But yet that's not going to fix anything other than maybe kick the can down the road, because most of the challenges in customer success are organizational and company-wide. And if you're fixing the symptom, you're not actually fixing the problem, which means you're not going to cure it, which is why you see churn in customer success leaders too. It's also, I hate to keep saying this because it sounds like a cop-out, but it's hard, right? Yeah. And no one wants to hear, hey, we're going to come in and do a full company assessment because we need to do that in order to fix your revenue motion, which is really what we're talking about, right? Yeah. They're like, no, I want to know if you got a playbook. And I had a client say this to me about a month ago. It's like, I want us to get to minimum viable good in 6 weeks. And I said, that's not going to happen. Yeah. It's not going to happen. Yeah. Because I don't know enough about your organization to be able to do that. I can give you ideas and things that you need to do. But if I do that in a vacuum, all that's going to happen is you're going to have one group of people moving in one direction, everyone else moving in a different direction. And the people that I tell to do best practices for customer success are going to be unable to do so, because that means they have to stop doing something else, which means there's a cascading effect. So again, if you don't start at the beginning, like Jenny said right at the top, with the basics and the foundation, it's not going to work. But it takes time and effort, and it takes real commitment from your founder, your CEO, your board, whoever is leading that, or it's not going to work.
Well, that's, I think about, you mentioned earlier, like, kind of the friction points of what happens with growing businesses, right? Pricing changes, not even just like it raises or increase, but just the model itself changing, like the way that seats or platform access is kind of granted, right? And very rarely do I see those things coming through the customer success org, starting from the customer success org. I see revenue leaders saying, okay, now go make this okay with our customers, right?
Yes.
And I'm happy.
I having reported up to boards and working with VCs for like 15 years, like I get the reasoning behind it, but there is such a gap to say, I work at a company called UserTesting. Like what we do first and foremost is we get like early stage products in front of customers to make sure it works. And this is the lens that I think through, where it's like, anytime the board is like, hey, we're going to do this, we should go talk to our 5 biggest customers that are stoked to renew with us and say, Is this going to change the way that you're stoked to renew with us? And if they're like, oh, absolutely, then we don't do it. Right? Then that's data. That's not like a slap on the wrist or just somebody that's wrong. That's just saying, let's go back to the drawing board, guys, because you're not always going to say everything is going to go through them. But if you can, within a reasonable scope, have that validation of product and pricing and experience that goes through your customer base that is currently using you, you're going to see a substantial risk, reduction in unmitigated churn.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that you mentioned something really interesting though, and that's we talk about this often, is like, at what point did we go too far from inside out operational models and less on outside in? And I think like in the quest for efficiency and scale that we like added complexity to benefit internal operations and business practices, and who suffers is customer. And so we need to really evaluate some of those things. Do they make sense? Do they actually benefit the customer? Do they actually drive customer retention and expansion the way that they were designed to do? Or are they just nice to haves for us in our internal operational, efficiency models?
Hey, everybody, it's Josh. I'm taking a quick break from the podcast to tell you a bit about UpdateAI. I started UpdateAI to solve two major challenges for CS teams. The first is that we save CSMs 4 to 5 hours per week with our productivity through AI. Secondly, we give leaders a window into all the conversations across each account and the entire portfolio. So we help knowledge transfer, we help increase the coverage model of your CS teams, and we help you detect emerging patterns in what your customers are telling your CSMs across all the risks, product feedback, advocacy moments, and expansion opportunities. So come check us out at www.updateai. It's completely free to sign up and trial.
It's always been really strange to me that sales goes out, like the typical joke is like sales will just sell whatever they want, they can in order to close a deal, and then we have to fix it and build it. The reality is like product should be only building what our customers are asking for. And the salespeople are really good at selling things that don't exist. So let them sell what we're building already, right? And just flip that on its head where like they can paint the future of what we're already building instead of being the paintbrush that our product guys have to follow along with. And I just don't understand. There's so much more revenue in owned business than there is in net new, and it's better money.
Exactly, and it's baffling that it's so backwards because, like you had said at the end of your last question, then you have all of this churn that's unmitigated. You can't do anything about. But
why would I pay you this when I paid you that? I'm going to go somewhere else. Like, shit.
Right. Oh, gee, I guess I didn't see that coming. Right.
Yeah.
But yet, when someone's bringing in a new CS leader, the first thing that they say is, "Look, I've got a churn problem. You really need to fix it." And depending on where you are, your response is going to be, "Well, of course, I've got this great process. We're going to fix it." The reality is, well, do you know why you're having that churn? Because my guess is that most of it is not because you have a really shitty customer success organization. It probably has a lot of other reasons that new CS leader probably not going to fix unless they do what we've said, which is really go back and have a more holistic view as to why you're having those problems.
Well, I think that's why, and this is a question that I have for you is if you're coming into these early stage companies, to say maybe you don't need a CS leader, maybe you need a revenue leader that understands product, or maybe you need a product leader that understands revenue, or maybe you need, somebody that's focused on renewals because you really actually do need Salesforce to be cleaned up, right? And that's going to solve the problem that you're building 18 months in the future. And I think that's where this model that you guys are building really comes in handy, is not just, I'm going to give you the playbook, that you're going to use, and it's going to be 10 grand and I'm going to teach you how to do it. But it's like, no, I'm going to give you what you're going to look like in 18 months and you're going to be really fucking scared. Exactly. So let's make sure that we do the right things now so that when we hit that mark, you understand what segmentation means, where your revenue is, what risk actually is, instead of whack-a-mole, play that firefighter card down the road.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that what you were talking about with unmitigated churn was the story of 2023. Nobody could figure out what was going on until mid-year. Oh no, there's all this churn. Oh shoot, we need to look internally and look at our own customers and how to protect them. And if you did it right and you actually went and looked at your customers, talked to them, and maybe change your roadmap to match the customer needs versus the market, you may have had higher retention rates, right? As a result of it. I remember I was at CS Customer Success Festival, and that was the topic, one of the topics about that. Hi, Josh. I think
Sounds like
but it was so important, and I think it's like so simplistic in that way, but it was very much missed, because in the hunt for growth, it's like growth at all costs. You kind of run into that. You run into that issue of like, are we actually selling what we make? Or do we have product? Are we selling to the right customer? One of the things that we talked about as a group early on in our journey to do this is also not just talking to salespeople. Like I think Jenny was alluding to that, like bringing in people to talk about customer success that don't do it, because we want to know the perception. Because I think a lot of us also live in like this rose-colored world of, wow, we support each other so much. I'm sorry to say, but others don't.
We like everybody's LinkedIn post.
Yes,
we're very supportive of one another, without a doubt.
Yeah, and it's awesome. But like, is that our reality? I think we want to be educated more ourselves and educate others.
I love that. That's
the other
great.
thing I think is important is like we're talking a lot of early stage, but even like when you get later, do the things that we have done. Wow, great language today, Jenny. Do the things that we have done.
Good English.
I did good. You should see the text I sent these two earlier. I'm like, I don't wanna, I'm gonna. I'm like, what is wrong with me? I've been holed up in a house with 13-year-olds for hurricanes for too long. Anywho, but do they still make sense? I keep going back to this. Did we make things overly complicated in correlation to the value it's providing to both our teams and our customers? Most often, if you do an audit, it's confusing, it's complex, it makes no sense, this is stupid. I'm not going to say it that way, but you can realize that like we've made things messy and dirty that aren't moving the needle that matters the most, right? Especially going back to where we are. Where are we in the business? Where are we in growth? Where are we in our efficiency and scale? And so I think some of that is just the noise of people and what they've done, and like, oh, I'm at this organization at this stage and I've done these things, and it's like, great, that's that one unique scenario and situation. Unless you match all of the markers in that company, that organization, that customer, that product, that situation, throw it out the window.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yep. You might be able to take some of the ideas, but you're certainly not going to be able to take like we talked about, the playbook.
The playbook.
Here you go execute this. You'll be great.
Yeah. But I think, to your point, like when we talk about 2023, where like nobody knew what was going on, we went through like an acquisition and merger during that year, and we prioritized a lot of like product stuff, which makes a lot of sense, right? We're going to sell some more stuff. But the market really said, nobody wants to spend any money, right? There's all those layoffs and everybody was consolidating, right? So the price points was the big deciding factor. And for us to then do whatever, I don't know that we raise prices, but like if we were to go into that market and say, hey, we raise prices because look at all these new features that we build, every single customer is going to say, I mean, cool, that's great. Like so stoked, but like, I can't give you another 50 grand. Like, what are you thinking of? Right. So this is kind of that conversation that like, I'm really interested in how we get senior leaders to say, like, we have to move this lever over and say, let's deprioritize. Maybe don't stop building things, but obviously because this is us builder market, we're SaaS and it's America. But to the point where it's like, how do we then say, okay, like we can't increase price this year because we know that we're going to lose 20 or 30% of our revenue just on that chunk. So let's kick our pricing updates to next year. And this is where those GTM leaders come in to say, like, what is the best path forward for today? Which gets really, really difficult when you've got boards and VCs and PEs and all these other guys that have different metrics.
Exactly.
But getting that conversation started of saying, like, how many times have I had to like get on a call with a sales leader to say, guys, I don't think that we can raise prices on this specific customer. And then we make an exception, and then we have to write all of these processes that get very, very difficult. And then the next year it's like, well, we told you we were going to raise it up. And then the customer feels bad. And there's just this like icky feeling. When it's like, isn't like the heart of what we're trying to do is make this other customer successful. So why do we let all of these other things get in the way?
And you had said before, John, there's, sales has this, or even early stage companies, growth at any cost. But growth at any cost also leads to success at any cost, right? Meaning you do whatever it takes to keep that customer. Your example of price increase right there is a perfect one, right? We can't increase this customer because they're going to cancel if we do.
Yeah.
Okay. But again, we're now reacting as opposed to planning. Whereas you said, look at that. I got a little thumbs up from you. I don't even know if that was,
I don't know why that's there. It does that sometimes.
Yeah. That we were once again solving for a symptom, whereas you said, I knew that this was not going to work beforehand. So rather than have the conversation of, we're going to raise your price. No, sorry, we're going to cancel. Okay, never mind. We're not going to. It should have just been, we're going to hold the course for this year to really make sure you're getting value. But yet we don't think that far ahead.
Right.
I have a gripe with this Bain article. Sorry, I'm going to bring it up because everyone's talking about it right now, and I talked about it this morning too. There's a Bain article about how NRR has been like 75% less than the previous period, or not, of measurement, and customer success is essentially failing. And I hate like the title of it in general because it just makes everybody feel bad. But what I looked at when I read the article, because I read it a few times, and I was like, you're not talking about gross logo retention. They're talking about NRR. In the years post-pandemic, if that scenario you guys described played out, what would happen is people would churn. But if we maintain that revenue and said, hey, well, never mind, we won't upscale you. We'll give you the same thing at the same price. It might not have been expansion. It might have been like, even a downgrade, but you could have maintained that logo. And that logo retention is probably going to get you value in the long run. I don't think they dove into that. That bothered me a little bit. So I was just, thinking like, what you guys are talking about is very much related to that. I think we have to look at the whole picture too of what happened in the last couple of years and how we're still recovering, right? Everyone's still recovering.
Well, in this constant flip, like our sales leaders have always tracked the same thing. Like what have they sold? What's your book? Like how much money did you make this quarter? Yeah. Every single year for 40 years in software, right? But for us, it's NRR, it's GRR, it's usage, it's brand, it's loyalty, it's referenceability. Like it's all of these things that just get us to this point where those of us have been doing this for 10 or 15 years, like most people in this room are just like, Jesus, like, can we just talk to the customer? Like, please. And can we just make sure, like, number one, that every T is crossed and I is dotted? Like from day one. And why is it so difficult to get everybody in the room together to say, did we meet your expectations? No? Where did we fail?
Right. And
great. I've got a mitigation plan and here's a playbook. Right.
Right. And that's our thesis again is why is it so hard? Right? Why is it that so many customer success leaders continue to fall into that trap of having to defend something? Well, it's because you never got internal alignment on what are you supposed to do. And instead of having this soup of various different metrics, look, I'm not saying any of them are right or wrong.
They're right for a reason.
They're right for a reason, and they're right for a certain point in time. But none of it matters unless everyone internally is aligned on what that means and what's reasonable for you to be able to do. Because if you can't and you don't, you're going to have a really bad conversation at some point.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is important is like short and long-term thinking. So like right now, you talk about reactionary. That's a short-term response to a temporary pain, right? It's temporary. We know this market will shift. Data and history tells us it's going to shift. So are we doing knee-jerk reactions right now for what? For survival? How realistic is it? What are the opportunities? So what I love to do is also do a little like flip it on its head, challenge. You're giving option A or B. What about C? In that example, John, what is the opportunity? There's an M&A situation. How do we give them exposure to new incremental value without increasing prices, knowing that we're deferring incremental revenue, maybe 9 to 12 months? But is that better than one, pissing off customer and losing them, or two, setting the expectation that they're going to have incremental spend next year and they're going to be thinking about that for the next 12 months and measuring every single thing against, is it worth what they're going to charge me next year, right? Like we're setting ourselves up for failure in a lot of situations by not thinking creatively about what is the long-term goal. Oh, it's revenue growth. Great. How are there different ways that we can approach getting there that are best serving us and our customer? And we don't take the time to think about that. We're just go.
Yeah. Well, this kind of gets into like, I think some of the, maybe the nuance of kind of what we have gotten into as CSMs, right? Every day, whether it's a success plan or QBR or any of these kind of things that we have in our back pocket. I tend to like, I think one of the most important things for a CSM to do in general, not just as leadership, but as an IC, is to be able to forecast, not just like churn, not just growth, not just opportunity, but forecast like almost that maturity idea, that thought of like where this customer is. And we talk about being strategic CSMs. We talk about being able to do strategy and whatever the hell that means. But the problem is like we're so handcuffed where a successful CSM that is making a 6-figure salary should be able to look at their book of however many accounts they have and say, these are the ones that can handle a price increase.
Yeah.
These are the ones that we actually need to long-term like build relationships with, and we can't do shit until we get them, right? And not even like segmentation of like green, red, yellow. I mean like full on, yes. I want an analysis of your book every quarter, and I want to know what your plan is. And this kind of gets into what you guys are doing right now on a micro level, right? To empower our CSMs to truly be the CEO of their book, to say, these 10 are going to churn, and these are the reasons why. And I'm going to bring in my sales guy to go resell them because we're going to lose them for whatever reason. And I'm just going to sweep them off the deck, right? Or the other side of it. We actually need to go in and save, and here's our save plan, right? But we don't have that. We have
even when you do, you too often have it in a reactionary way. Meaning, like it's the end of quarter. I need to present something. I need to go through their book. Everyone like, what's everything going to look like? What's the forecast look like? Instead of, hey, we're planning for 2025. We're planning for budgets. We need to forecast what we think we're going to have for growth and churn. I need everyone to go through, like you said, an account by account, book by book basis, and come up with a bottoms up approach and analysis. Now, can you scale that once you get big? Maybe not. But if you're the CEO of your book, which I really like, and it's what I've always tried to have my teams do, then you should be able to do that without a lot of, it shouldn't be like a massive exercise. It should be something I could stop you in the hallway. And for the most part, do people still do that anymore? I can stop you on a Zoom random call and
I'll DM you on
tell me, my top 5 clients, this is what's going on. And this is how I feel about them. Because when you do it in reverse, like we've all done, and when people still do, that's when you have those difficult conversations, because that's when you get into the board and the CFO saying, why didn't you make your number? Well, you're not making your number because we don't think we can do a price increase that you all counted on. But had we gone through and said only 30% of the book in aggregate we think is going to be ripe for that, forecast that, budget for that, build that, and now you have something.
Well, it's like, and I told you 9 months ago that I wasn't going to make my quota this quarter. And I have been telling you that sales needs to pay attention, and product needs to pay attention, and engineering needs to pay attention. And they haven't done anything. And then I get dinged.
Exactly.
So, and this is that thing where it's like, it's not even about the dollars per se. It is, if we are to be successful and if we are to be viewed with these NRR and GRR metrics that are technically success metrics, but we as individual contributors don't have the lever to actually influence those, but we're measured by it. It's like, what's that old saying? Like if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, everybody's going to think it's an idiot. Like we're just,
I don't know, but I really like that.
Yeah, I probably just made that up.
That's good.
But like, that's the idea here is like, I get so frustrated when I get to the end of the quarter. And I was like, I told my boss I was going to 88%. And I told you why, and we all agreed why. And now I've got to do all these exceptions. And now I've got to do all this paperwork just so that I could get whatever I'm owed or whatever I'm earned, right? When the reality is 9 months ago, there's a bunch of other people that didn't get to do the work that they want to do. And I'm not going to say they didn't do their job because they didn't know it. It wasn't a pipeline. It wasn't a funnel for them.
Right.
I'm a big fan of these funnels, of trying to figure out.
And you can't prioritize unless you do that, right? Because instead what happens is when you go back to your product team and your engineering team, instead of prioritizing something they could have done that might have prevented your 12% of churn in your book, they're prioritizing whoever was banging loudest on the table, or whoever was the one who happens to know somebody, or whoever called the CEO instead, right? But you're not making data-driven prioritization decisions.
Yeah. You are saying something that's very important is, are we all tracking that? Like I talked about this last week I was at a panel, and I was talking about how your product team might not know the impact that cutting something off the roadmap has, unless you are providing that information and like shouting it loudly. And like a lot of times CSMs like, oh, well, we talked about it in the Red Zone meeting. Well, that's not like the place that product is coming to learn about what's going to cost you.
No, they're rolling their eyes because you're bitching.
Yeah. Like, why am I in this meeting?
And you're not quantifying it too.
So you need to quantify it.
In terms of
how
revenue.
much, what's the impact, how many customers, right? So it's like, I think there is responsibility on our end, and it comes in the form of like, not only just evangelizing the good, but also by evangelizing where like change needs to be,
I love that. Okay, we got 5 minutes on this podcast. So I want each of you, if you could walk into your favorite organization and take ownership over their CS team, what is the first thing that you would do, Larry?
I would do what the three of us said in the very beginning. I would make sure that I got to understand everyone's why and why they were doing what they're doing. I would understand what the organization looks like and how it feels, but then I would go wider and start to figure out all the challenges that they might have. Who are the partners for me so that I can help solve that, or at least help figure out how we prioritize what we can and cannot solve. Because you're not going to go into an organization, go like this, like we said, say, here's my playbook and fix everything.
Yeah.
But if I realize that one of the big disconnects is within GTM, within sales, or one of the big disconnects is within product or engineering, or maybe it's internal and we just aren't great at being able to really understand what our clients are valuing, then at least I could know. But it can't just be I'm going to come in because I've got 25 years of experience in customer success, and here's what I do, and here's how I do it. Go do it, right? Yeah. Nobody's going to want that. They need to understand why. They need to buy into it. And you need to have partners throughout the organization to be able to help you execute on that vision. Otherwise, it's going to fail.
Yeah. Jenny, what's the first thing that you would do in this dream scenario?
Yeah, similar to Larry, I definitely go on the listening tour that everyone talks about, but very much from like a retro perspective. What's going well? What's not going well? What do we need to stop? What do we need to start? What do we continue? And then the second thing layered on that is I would actually look at kind of the organizational rhythm, if you will. And that is outside of the CS function. So I want to understand the pressures and the energy in, the technical team, in the go-to-market team. I want to understand and synthesize all of the various inputs, because at the end of the day, as we talked about, they flow downstream to us. So how do I understand what's going on, above? I hate all of the like flood references we're making today and the fires. Like it feels very destructive.
I had to vacuum up my son's room this morning from the flood water. So
I'm sorry about that, but I mean it is. We do get the byproduct of a lot of things that float downstream organizationally. So how do I go up and get a good pulse on what's going on? Where are they coming from? What are the trends and the baselines organizationally that I need to keep in mind and or then think forward to, as Larry mentioned, when I'm going to kind of work cross-functionally to start creating plans.
Got it. What about you, Parul?
Yeah,
you can't just say what they said either.
You guys said all the good stuff. Okay, all right. Well, here, I'll tell you one of my favorite things that ever happened. And it's not possible in every company, but I wish I could do this in every company. In the first 2 weeks of being there, you have to meet with every team. And the leader of every team has to meet with all the new hires. So we set up these calls that would be there on once a month, and you'd have to go and do it. And I think no matter what level of the new people coming in, or you being that new person coming in, there was so much learned about the functions in the company. There was a baseline of respect that we all gained of what people do. Because many times people will say to you, what do you do in customer success? I don't even know. You take that time, if possible, up front to educate your new hires, and that would be me. I think that is super valuable, and it goes along with the listening tour, right? But you're also just maybe starting to ask questions like, what are you incentivized by? Do you know what's your goal on the scorecard? Because most of us don't ask that question and don't pay attention. And I often had team members that would be I'm frustrated because product's not listening to me because they won't build this. We're talking a lot about product teams too. Sorry, it's not on purpose, but people get frustration. It's well, do we know why? Maybe they have a different goal in mind, right?
Yeah.
Maybe just taking time to understand.
Yeah. Well, I feel like there's a whole nother podcast about how we can just teach our CSMs to stop kicking things over to product, because I do think that we start making our lives very, very difficult when we stop teaching the customers how to use our product the way it was built today and not how we will build it for them in the future. And I think there's a huge opportunity in that space. Not that we shouldn't take feature requests and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, so many CSMs have this gripe, right? That's what I would do, is I would just shut off the funnel feature requests.
We're gonna do that episode. But when you drill into the bottom of it, John, it's fear driven. We're driven by a lot of fear in this function. Just think about
leave. Oh my God.
We need to prevent churn, right? We talk about this a lot. Or are we driving success? Just think of those two phrases. Which one makes you feel better?
Driving success. I like driving success.
Or preventing churn, right? Preventing churn is like, get in my little cubby, like, let's just insulate and try to, do our best. So there's a lot of fear in the space. And I think it goes by not necessarily having the things we're talking about, a foundational definition of what success is. What does great success look like? What are we actually striving for? Not all of the things, but if we got really clear and concise on what we're doing right now, how are we measuring it? And why does it matter for the business? And let's just get really great at that. And let's say no to some other things. Right? We'd have some space to actually do our jobs well and to do what we all got into this industry to do.
I love that. That's perfect. I think that's a great place to end. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you, Jon
Johnson.
Thanks,
Everybody
Jon.
else bailed on me. So I'm going to say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.